Hello, hello. Welcome to the Aurelian Coaching webinar series. So for those of you who have participated in these before, welcome, welcome. Welcome back, and also a warm welcome to those who haven't done this before. And if this is your first time, I'm so glad you guys are here. If you have uh, been in these webinars before, you will know that I always start off by saying, I never have any slides. I don't like slides. It's just me talking. Today I have slides. So I'm going to be sharing that. But as others are joining us, I want to give a little bit of background about who I am and why you should listen to anything I have to say. Um, so my name is Nicole Coustier. I'm the founder of Aurelian Coaching and the creator of the DART method for deliberate planning. And I spent many, many years in a, corporate environment and did that for a long time. And then decided when the company that I helped build got acquired, I decided to not work for a big multinational firm and wanted to kind of go out on my own. And so I picked the one thing that I really loved more than anything else, and that was coaching other people. Now, what I have found in the 5 years since I've been running Aurelian Coaching is that all of my clients, all of the case studies over the years, and even the folks that I used to coach when I did work corporate, you know what it all boiled down to was decision making. Decision making. And so that is my specialization: high stakes, high consequence decision making. And so that is what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. Now, I don't care if you don't think rationally that the decisions that you have to make are as high stakes as other people have to make. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is, if it feels very high consequence, if it feels high impact and high stakes, then you are in the right place. Even if you're making what comparatively are small decisions for yourself, for your family. Maybe you're not making decisions for big multinational firms. So what? If it feels like it matters, then you're in the right place. Okay, so I want to hear from people. If you can see me, if you can hear me okay, just type something in chat and we'll get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I will be going through the very few slides that I have. I decided to make an exception this time and actually create some slides. Thanks so much. I'm glad you guys can hear me okay. Because I have a lot of information to share. I don't know that we'll take the whole hour, but I want to keep track. And if you guys are taking notes, there's going to be a lot more information that I'm going to be talking about than will be in the slides. But it'll just anchor us and give us a chance to go through all the content and make sure we're not missing anything. Okay, so here we go. I am going to be talking about managing the emotion of big decisions. Okay, so I've already given a brief introduction to myself. Nicole Coustier, startup advisor, executive performance coach, and life coach. And so I have a number of different certifications. And honestly, this is just what I love to do. I'm going to be giving you guys, first of all, some myths about decision making. A lot of things that we just all accept are the truth. And I need us to break those myths. I need us to break the assumptions that we have about decision making in order for us to start making better decisions. So I'm going to go through those myths first. Second, I'm going to walk you through some of the secrets of really good decision making, especially high stakes decision making. And then I'm going to walk you through the decision cascade. So this is something that I actually walk all my clients through. There's a decision cascade program that you can sign up for. And if you listen through the end of today's webinar, I'm actually going to give you a discount on that for anybody who wants to sign up for that program. But I'll walk you through the basics of that decision cascade. And then, what questions that you can start to ask yourself, that if you start to unpack the answers to those questions, you'll actually be a lot better at making decisions than you ever were before. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so here are some of the myths that I'd like to walk us through. Have you guys ever heard that we make thousands of decisions per day? Yeah, we really don't. We don't at all. And here is the distinction that I want to make. We may pick from a set of options. We may pick things many, many times throughout the day, but we're actually not making decisions multiple times a day. Okay, so what's the difference between choosing something versus making a decision? Choice is really just selecting from two or more possibilities, right? Those possibilities are in front of us and we pick a thing, right? So this is like if somebody were to say, what's your favorite color? Well, you know all the colors of the rainbow, you know the colors in the Crayola box. You pick the thing that you like. That type of thing, we do lots and lots. But that is different than making decisions. So decisions are conclusions. You're taking in data, you're considering that data, and you're reaching a conclusion from that data. And from that conclusion, you are behaving in a certain way. So it's proactive, it's a process, right? You're resolving something, you're reaching some sort of judgment. And then based on that judgment, you are going to act or not act. You're going to have some sort of behavior. These are things that people talk about. We make thousands of decisions per day. No, we don't. We don't. Decisions, you know what? I mean, they are heavier. They are heavier than just picking a thing. So I wanted to dispel that. The second myth about decision making that I think is really important is that the best decisions are rational and completely devoid of emotion. Completely devoid of emotion. The less you feel, the better a decision you make. Okay, so two things about that. One, that's impossible. Okay, it is not possible to make a decision completely devoid of emotion. It doesn't happen. Okay. And the other thing that I want to say about that is that there's a difference between, as rational a decision as you can make, where people suppress the emotion that they feel, versus making a decision where you acknowledge 100% all of the emotions that are coming up, all of the emotions that are influencing you, all the emotions that are coloring how you are interpreting facts, and then dealing with those emotions. surfacing the emotions, unpacking those, understanding their role and how they're influencing you, and then knowing what to do with them. The best decisions are not devoid of emotion. The best decisions are made when you know exactly the role that emotion is playing. Okay, the third myth. The more time you have to deliberate, the better the decision. Yeah, this is so not true. This is so not true. Okay, couple of things about this. Number one is we are all familiar with that gut reaction, right? That initial instinct that tells us, where do we have to go here? What is the right thing to do? Okay. Yeah, there's lots and lots written about trusting your instincts, and those instincts usually come pretty immediately. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that those initial instincts are the way you have to go 100% of the time. No, that's actually not necessarily true. Sometimes you do have to collect more data and other things like that. But that instinct that we have, that gut reaction, tells us that sometimes we know upfront, and that more time doesn't actually buy you a better decision. Okay. Another thing that I want to say about this is um, if you're a perfectionist and if you like to make decisions with 100% of all possible data, there are people that really want to give themselves as much time, as much runway as possible to collect more data. And if they don't have all the data, or if they're worried about not having all the data, they just kick that can down the road and they're paralyzed. They actually can't make a decision. Okay. Yeah, the more time you give to this, a lot of times it can have diminishing returns, right? You may get a little bit more data, but that data is not going to make or break anything. Okay. So the more time you have to deliberate, not necessarily the better the decision. Okay. Here's the final myth that I really want us to spend a lot of time on and focus on. And that is that there are right decisions and wrong decisions. Okay. This is very binary thinking, right? This is very much, in fact, I've talked to a lot of people and coached a lot of people who say, who believe that there is one right decision and everything else is a wrong decision. Ooh, yeah, don't do that to yourself. Okay. Very rarely is there ever one right decision. And in fact, I want us to get away from binary thinking altogether. Let's not talk about right versus wrong. Instead of binary outcomes in decision making, I'd like us to embrace the decision spectrum, the decision continuum that says that all of the options that are available to you, whatever decision you make, it's going to be somewhere on this continuum of poor to best, right? Not just right or wrong, but poor to best. And you are always going to try to make as best the decision you can. Nobody's going to actively make a poor decision, right? Nobody's going to do that. That's crazy. Of course, you're always going to make the best decision that you can. So, give yourself a little bit of grace here. It's very rarely that there's just the one right decision. And because think about that. If there's only one right decision, oh my goodness, man, are the odds against you. You are just setting yourself up for disaster if you are embracing the thought that there's one right decision and everything else is wrong. So don't do that to yourself. Okay. So now that we've gone through some of the myths of decision making, I want to shift gears to, well, if not these myths, then what? How does one think about decision making, especially when it matters so much, where the decision that you make has all of these downstream implications? Okay, here's what I do want you to embrace. Number one, this concept of decision permanence. A lot of people feel that once they make a decision, that's it. You're done. There's no going back. And I will tell you that I have never once, no matter how high the stakes were, I've never once come to a decision that was truly permanent. Not for myself, not for any of my clients, not for all the people that I've managed over the years. Decision permanence is actually extremely rare. It's life or death stuff, right? And the decisions that we make daily are not life or death decisions daily, unless you're a first responder, right? Okay, so I want, I don't want people listening to interpret this as me saying, the decisions, it's not important what you decide. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that the permanence of a decision may feel greater than what is true in actuality. Okay. And here's the other thing. I'm not saying that making a pivot, changing your mind, adjusting your circumstance after a decision is made, I'm not saying that that's not hard. Yeah, it could be hard to change things after you make a decision. There could be emotional upheaval. There could be, more time that is required to make an adjustment after a decision. All I'm saying is that it's not permanent. I was coaching somebody, this was a couple of years ago, but for those of you who've known me for some time, I'm actually a life coach for widows. And I had a client through the Working Widow program that I run who felt like she needed to move. She needed to move out of state. She wanted to have a different environment, a different change of pace. She wanted to interact with a new set of people in a new home in a different living environment and all of this kind of stuff. And she wanted to do that in order to facilitate her healing process. And I mean, analysis paralysis. She could not comfortably and confidently make the decision to move, because she felt like it was so permanent. She thought of all these things that came with a move out of state. She would be moving away from friends. She would be moving away from family, her entire support network. And yet it felt like the right thing to do for her. And I remember coaching her through this. And I said, well, if you don't like it, you can move back. And at first her response was to kind of scoff at it a little bit, right? And dismiss it. And I said, no, 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 I'm very serious about this. You can move somewhere, and then guess what? You can move back. if you don't like it, and if you discover that it's not actually helping in your healing and that you want to come back to family. Now, I wasn't saying that it's the easiest thing in the world to do it and you just kind of snap your fingers and done, but you can. You can actually move back. Okay. So decision permanence, actually very rare. Don't get yourself wrapped up in feeling like or interpreting your situation as though you reach some point of no return. That's actually extremely rare. Okay. Here's another secret about high stakes decision making that I want all of us to think about and truly embrace. That sound decisions come from both managing data and managing emotion. Now, I talked about this a little bit in the last slide, right? But a lot of people suppress emotion, try to eliminate emotion entirely, and say, well, we just have to go by the facts. Okay. I will tell a little bit of a story on this personally for me. And for those of you who are on my email list, you will have read this story. But, and if you're not on the email list, get on the email list, aureliancoaching.com/email. And you'll get notifications of all these free webinars. But so I also had to deal with the decision to move. And this was like going on 10 years. I was trying to decide, where do I move? Where do I move? And I actually, guys, I made an Excel spreadsheet because I just felt like thinking about it wasn't getting me anywhere. And there were so many considerations and so many factors that I thought, you know what? Okay, what if I made an Excel model that had all the data, all the things that I was considering, everything from, community to the political vibe to, how friendly it was homeschooling to, the cost of living. I mean, I had all the data, right? And I thought, aha, if I put it in an Excel spreadsheet, it's going to be so easy. It's going to be so easy. It'll be obvious. Those of you who know me, especially going way back, I like Excel. And so I created all sorts of things. I did conditional formatting and I did like all this stuff. So anyway, when I finished the model and I put in all the data for the different parts of the US that I was considering moving to, there was one crystal clear front runner. I mean, not even close. Nothing else came close. Bright green cell in this Excel model. Super crystal clear where I should move. And you know what? I didn't want to move there. I just didn't. Sometimes managing data is not enough. And it is not a matter of suppressing emotion or just taking emotion completely out of it. I had to unpack, if that was the obvious choice from a data standpoint, why? Why am I resisting? Why do I not want to move there? Okay. So those are the things that are really important from the standpoint of, one of the secrets to high stakes decision making is not to suppress the emotion, but to identify what is my prevailing emotion around this and why do I feel that way? Okay. Back to the slides here. All right. Okay, so here's the third thing. The secret about high stakes decision making is that high stakes is a feeling. It's a feeling, not a fact. Now, 100% of all the people looking at your decision that you talk to might agree that that decision that you have to make matters a big fat deal. And yet, it's still not fact. Recognize that high stakes is an interpretation of your situation. High stakes is a feeling. It is not fact. And for those that coach with me, the ninja level of this stuff is, how do you get your quote high stakes decisions to feel as simple and as straightforward as making other less quote high stakes decisions? Because here it is. At the end of the day, decision making is decision making. You're managing data and you're managing emotions. Just recognize that when it feels so high stakes, it is because you are choosing and you're embracing that interpretation of your situation. Oh man, I get so many people pushing back on this, but it is pretty ninja level stuff. Okay, so high stakes is a feeling, it's not a fact, and just recognize that high stakes is optional. It doesn't have to feel high stakes. The circumstances in the situation are the same, right? Whether you interpret it as high stakes or not, nothing actually changes except your mindset on this. Okay. And I'm not suggesting that if you relinquish the feeling of it being high stakes, that somehow you're being irresponsible or you're just being loosey-goosey about it or you're not taking it seriously. No, 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 no. That's not what I'm suggesting. But when you're interpreting your situation as very high stakes and you are giving yourself stress about it, you're giving yourself uncertainty and worry, and you're losing sleep, just know that all of that is optional. It doesn't actually have to feel that way if you don't want it to feel that way. If feeling that way isn't actually helping anything and is making it worse, just know it doesn't actually have to feel that way at all. Okay, and here's the last secret. You can get better at it. Decision making is a skill, okay? And so, this is where this concept of, oh, we make thousands of decisions a day. No, we don't actually. And the reason I know that is because we are not getting better at decision making, right? We are picking things from a set of options that doesn't have, any significant downstream impact. It's not, making some sort of conclusion or judgment after a lot of consideration. Doesn't have these downstream implications. That's just picking things. We do that a lot. We do it a lot, but we don't make decisions as often as we think we do. And so when we are faced with a decision, guess what? It's hard. It's hard. Why would a decision be hard if we make thousands of them a day? It's because we need to practice. Decision making is a skill. All right. So let me pause there and see if there are any questions, comments. Is any of this tracking with you guys? Yeah, so during a one-on-one coaching engagement, the decision cascade program is what I do, and I walk people through, given all this stuff that I'm teaching you today, well, what do we do with it? So if we're dispelling these myths, right? And we're embracing some of these secrets of decision making, well, then how do I actually do those things? That's part of the coaching program. I'll give you a little bit more insight into that in the next slide. Okay, everyone's tracking? Great. All right, here we go. Let's go back to the slides. All right. Okay, so here's the decision cascade. Now remember that decision making devoid from emotion is not the way to go. Mostly because I'm not sure it's possible. Every decision has emotion associated with it. But this is the cascade. Okay, emotion is right smack dab in the middle, guys. Okay, so how do we feel a thing about our decision? How does it feel high stakes? Well, if you look to the left of emotion, you'll find mindset. Your thinking and your beliefs 100% of the time generate the emotion that you feel in any given moment. Okay, so you may feel that your decision is high stakes because you have the mindset that your decision is permanent, right? If you really believe and embrace that there's no going back, there's no matter how hard it is, no matter how much time, but you are locked in and there is never going to be an opportunity for you to pivot or backtrack from that decision. Man, I can see why that decision feels so high stakes, right? If your emotion is fear around your decision, fear, well, what is your mindset about the facts of your situation? Right? You're probably thinking about the worst case scenarios rather than what's more likely to happen, right? And a lot of fear associated with high stakes decision making, that stuff is never unpacked. That stuff it's never even acknowledged, right? Because we're taught to make decisions purely from data and rationality, and we have to suppress emotion and ignore emotion. Guys, I'm not saying that you make fear-based emotions. No way. I would never recommend that. However, if fear is something that you're experiencing associated with the decision, you got to unpack that. You got to unlock why you're afraid. What are you afraid of? This is something that I want to talk about. When I was coaching another colleague of mine, this was many, many years ago, but it really stuck with me. She was a brilliant associate, and I was working with her, so much potential. But you know what? She had to give a big presentation in front of a client, and she was really junior. Okay, lots of potential, very smart, talented person, but pretty entry level. And she was going to present to a client, very, esteemed people, big titles, right? And she was terrified. She was terrified. And I was trying to help her through it. And I asked her, "What are you afraid of?" And she didn't want to say, or she was really dismissive of her own fears, of her own thinking around that initiative. And I said, well, this is a safe place. I don't care how irrational it is. Like, let's voice it, right? And it turns out she was really terrified that she would give, like in a Q&A part of the presentation, that she would, not that she wouldn't know the answer. She was actually not terrified about that. She was terrified that she would answer a question with supreme confidence, 100% sure of herself, and be so completely wrong, and set that client down a path where they would make huge business decisions around her wrong answer, and that she would cost the company millions, and that the company would fail as a result. Not rational, right? But that's what she was terrified of. Guys, unless we can give voice to the thing that we are most terrified of, we can't actually address it. We can't go anywhere with it. We can't fix it. Okay? So if you are feeling fear around a high stakes decision, call it out. I don't care how irrational it feels. You need to give voice to it, because your brain is processing this very irrational worst case scenario. And without addressing it, what ends up happening is your brain will not let it go. Your brain just won't let it go. So don't do that to yourself. Go ahead and give voice to, this is the worst case scenario that I'm terrified of, and give yourself the opportunity to work through it. Okay, that's what coaching is for. Okay, here we go. All right, so what is on the other side of emotion? Well, emotion drives all of our behavior. There's no exception to this. Emotion drives 100% of our behavior. If we are feeling terrified, we're not going to act, right? If we're worried about making the wrong decision, and we know better than that now, right? We know that decisions are less about right and wrong and more on the continuum of poor to best. But if we are feeling worried that we're going to make the wrong decision, guess what? We kick that can down the road, right? We procrastinate, right? If we're worried that we're going to be judged, right? That there's no room for error, that the decision that we make could cost us our job, right? And that there's no bouncing back from that, right? We paralyze ourselves. Okay, so I present the decision cascade here to give everyone an appreciation for how these things are related to one another, and how our mindset, the interpretation of the facts that surround us, generate our emotion, and our emotion drives our behavior. And what we do, right? Whether we act or don't act, whether we, behave in a way that is not thoughtful and not considerate. I mean, those are the types of things that generate the results that we get in our lives, right? Okay, so this is the basis. This is the tool that I use when I coach my clients through high stakes decision making. Okay, so here we go. This is a little piece of coaching. I'd like you guys to do this self-coaching. When you are in the middle of a high stakes, high consequence decision that you need to make, I want you to ask yourself, what are my assumptions? And are they based in fact and evidence, or do they just feel like truth? Do they just feel like it? Second, what is my prevailing emotion around this? Okay. So many people, when it comes to decision making, are all about facts, 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 data, data, data. I can't even look at emotion. No, I want you guys to ask, what is my prevailing emotion around this? And is that helping me or hurting me? And if it's hurting me, if it's giving me indigestion, if it's causing me to lose sleep, if I'm distracted and not present with my family because of this, well, what do I prefer my emotion to be instead? And as a result, what thoughts or beliefs will get me to the emotion that I want? This is the cascade in action. This is the decision cascade in action. And the final question I'd like you guys to ask yourself is, so much about decisions feel very difficult, right? Just recognize that that is your interpretation of your circumstance. You're in a situation, there are facts associated with the situation, you're managing all this data, and your interpretation of your situation is, this is terribly difficult, right? It's hard. So I want you to ask yourself, what would it look like if it were actually easy? What if you could have a high stakes decision and it were crystal clear to you what to pick? What would that look like? Give yourself permission to kind of explore that a little bit. What would your response be if this were easy, right? How would you behave if this were easy? What interpretation of your circumstances would you have if this were easy? Okay. Not irresponsible, right? But easy. Okay, guys, here we go. Any questions, comments? All right. So let me go to coaching options. I have some discounts for you guys if you're interested. So I do one-on-one coaching with folks. I also have programs, but I'll tell you guys about the one-on-one coaching. Let me go through fear setting exercise very briefly. This is something you guys can Google. It's actually from Tim Ferriss. He has like a 10-minute video on it. But if you are feeling fear around a decision, these are some of the questions that you can ask. We've already gone through some of this. So what is the worst case scenario? No matter how irrational it feels, do not dismiss it. You need to unpack that. Okay. So give voice to it. And then what you can do is ask, what are the few things that I could do if the worst case scenario happened? What could I do in the immediate aftermath to make it less bad? This is giving your brain permission to solve a problem that it is so freaking concerned about, irrational or not. If you give your brain permission to solve the problem, I think you'll start to feel a lot better. Third is, what's a more likely scenario? You've addressed the worst case, but what's more likely? What a lot of people do is they suppress the worst case scenario that they're so worried about because it's irrational. So they dismiss it, they never address it, they never give voice to it. So their brain never rests. And they just jump to number 3 and say, well, that scenario is so not likely. These are the other things that are more likely. What I want you to do is actually answer number 1 first, number 2 next, and then go to what's a more likely scenario. And this is a coaching question that I've asked other people that is very, very telling. This high stakes decision that you're making, have you ever seen other less talented and less intelligent people do it and do it just fine? The chances are the answer is yes. So take some comfort in that. You've got everything it takes to make a really sound decision here. Part of the coaching that I do is around building up confidence around decision making. And part of that has to do with practice, but a lot of it just has to do with what you believe about yourself, your own capability around making sound decisions. And we do a lot of work around that. So let's talk about what it looks like to work with me. So if you go to aureliancoaching.as.me, you will find a few options there. One is I actually have a Pathfinder session. That is a single session, guys. Single session. So rather than going through the whole program, if you just want help thinking through a particular decision or getting coached on something where you just feel like you need to get over the hump, or if you'd like an outsider's expert take on your situation, you need a coach to ask you some tough questions for you to work through your situation in a more efficient way. Yeah, sign up for just one Pathfinder session. As a result of this webinar, 20% off. You go ahead and use the promo code WISE and it'll cut 20% off of that. So that'll go from 300 to 240. And then if you're interested in the Decision Cascade program, where I actually teach you all of the tools and techniques that you need to make really good decisions, and you learn how to practice the skill of decision making. That's an 8-week program. And that also comes with a promo code. So promo code WISER, you actually get 30% off there. And so that'll go from 4,300 down to 3,000, about 3,000. So these are skills that once you learn them, you will have them forever and ever. Amen. Right? So it is, a lot of people have had a lot of success with these programs. I invite you to participate if you are interested in just seeing what it's like being coached with me. Then try the Pathfinder session and see if we're a good fit. At the very least, you'll get some forward momentum on whatever you're dealing with. If you're all in and you are entering a leadership position or you're facing a pretty big decision, whether it's a pivot in your career or a big move or expanding your family or dealing with toxic relationships in your life, you want to make some decisions around some of that stuff and you feel like you need deeper coaching, now's the time to do it, because this discount, both of these discounts will be available through August 1st, and then they go away. They're still always going to be available, but the discounts and the promo codes will only be available through August 1st. Okay, guys, any other questions, comments? It was my pleasure to do this. And I hope you guys got some really good information out of it. If you have questions, you can always reach me, nicole.coustier@aureliancoaching.com, or contact me through my website. You can set up consults and all that kind of stuff through aureliancoaching.com. And I hope this was helpful. Okay, I'll see you guys for the next Aurelian Coaching webinar. If you're not already on the email list, as I mentioned in the beginning, go ahead and sign up, aureliancoaching.com/email. And there's actually a free gift there, a really great self-coaching tool that you can download. as a result of signing up for the email list. Okay, guys, have a wonderful rest of the weekend. I hope to hear from some of you, and I'll see you at the next webinar. Bye.